Ringba, they be the king high. Now, what y'all won't do? Wanna be ballers, big shot paper callers.
Welcome to the Paper Caller Show. My name is Adam Young, the founder of Ringba, and today I have Justin Elenburg, the founding partner of MobileFUSED and the CEO of Quogen on the show. MobileFUSED was founded in 2011. They're based in Tempe, Arizona, and they were recently recognized by Inc. 5000 as one of the fastest growing private companies in America in 2018. So we're super excited to have Justin on the show. Thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to be here, and I'm really excited to be on your show. I've been watching a couple of the episodes. I love what you're doing with the industry and how you're helping people and kind of bringing the guys who maybe are the pioneers of this industry onto this show to kind of explain and share their struggles and challenges and their victories with everybody. I'm happy to be a part of it.
Oh, thank you so much. We really believe in community building and bringing people together. Rising tides lift all ships, and if we can help grow the pay-per-call space, I know that everyone involved is going to benefit from it. So thank you so much for that feedback. I really appreciate it. And speaking of getting started, why don't you just tell us what your first job was?
My first job, wow. So this is kind of a funny story. I went to I couldn't get my first job. I worked so hard and I kept going to all these places, and my mom's like, you got to find a job. I actually liked Carl's Jr. when I was in high school, and I actually went to Carl's Jr. and I told the manager, look, I need a job. I'm willing to work for the first month for free. And she's like, oh my gosh, you're going to work at a fast food joint for free? So she gave me the job instantaneously because of the fact that I was willing to work for free. And she's like, legally, we can't hire you for free. So I made my cool $4.25 an hour flipping burgers at Carl's Jr.
Wow, from Carl's Jr. to CEO. I love that because it's a story that says essentially that anyone who starts anywhere at any job can eventually build something and accomplish their dreams, which I'm a big proponent of. So thank you for sharing. And how did you, obviously you didn't go straight from Carl's Jr. into performance marketing. What did that progression look like, and where did your performance marketing career start?
Well, you don't want the whole hour on that, right?
No, but maybe a summary.
It's a long story, but I'll try and step through it. So I was into technology. I ended up getting a job at Best Buy during a December time, and then moved on from there, graduated high school, which was, just a big party for me. And then went into the military, which was another party. It was hard work, but I got to go to Aviano, Italy, and live in Italy for 2 years. I snowboarded all over Europe. That was an amazing time. I got out of the military early with a, I don't remember what they called it, but I got out so that I could go to ASU and get a degree. I didn't really know what I wanted a degree for, but I knew that getting an education was a good idea. So I went to ASU. During that time, I started investing in real estate. I also started a computer repair company, and I ended up selling the computer repair company, and I ended up with 16 homes at the time, as I was investing. So I kind of had this entrepreneurial spirit from early on. And with 16 homes, when the crisis went down, I ended up foreclosing on 2 of them, and I short sold 6 of them. So it was a nightmare of a 2-year period for me. I ended up starting a huge company that, or I should say it was a small company, and then it grew to 140 employees. We had a 40,000 square foot building, and we ended up partnering with a guy who was worth $500 million. And it ended up that we didn't do enough due diligence on this guy, and he actually took us. We were doing $1 million a month during this time. He took us for a ride, and he's in prison now for tax evasion. But we ended up folding that company. And what I learned through that company was that data was really valuable, because this was sort of an offline and online business. And so I realized that data was valuable. So I started really looking into SEO, and I started building a team around online marketing. That was when I found out that I kind of just was playing around with phones, and this was when Ring Revenue came out, and the ability to pay per call, it's just starting to kind of come around. Get a phone number and you place it somewhere. Well, there was 2 places that I was placing it: AdMob and Google AdWords. And so I put these phone numbers in. All of a sudden, I put in $50, and $150 comes out. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. This really works. And so I didn't know what I was doing, but It wasn't AdMob. AdMob was producing nothing. I put $50 in and it would just disappear. But in Google, all of a sudden I realized that people on WAP phones and a WAP phone was like the old phones, they don't actually do anything except you could barely even get to you could barely get to the internet, let alone do anything. So people were doing searches on these phones with T9 text, of course. They didn't really want to surf the internet. They didn't want to fill out forms, but boy, did they love clicking on phone numbers. So I just married these two together, and it was like I couldn't come up with a campaign that failed. I just had every advertiser coming at me. That was the point that I actually made a course called Mobile Money Bandit, and it taught people how to do pay-per-call. So I ended up with thousands of affiliates or thousands of people who wanted to do pay-per-call, but there was only a handful. There was maybe like 10 offers at the time. This is where I met Eric from HyperTarget and a couple of other guys in the industry. So from there, I took it and I said, wow, okay, I've got all these people who want these offers. That's where MobileFUSED came in. And I said, okay, I got to find offers to match with all these people that know how to drive phone calls. And so that's where I ended up kind of like the evolution of all of this started evolving to, wow, okay, it was kind of like by accident. Some of it was by accident, but it was pure dedication to moving forward and building something bigger and building something bigger. So, and now I'm here. I started MobileFUSED and built that up. I hired a CEO who runs that now. And I'm off to this, now I've created Quogen, which is a health insurance aggregator. So I'm really focused on one industry, and I'm going really deep with that industry. We do about $20,000 worth of calls a day. And what we're trying to do is build it up to where we get so big in one industry that somebody comes in and says, wow, I have to buy that.
I think that's a great plan. And just to rewind for a second, I want to point out that almost every single entrepreneur I speak with learned their most valuable lessons from trying, failing, and then dusting themselves off and continuing again. And I have yet to meet a successful entrepreneur in any industry that didn't have some type of failure. So I really appreciate that you wove that into the story. I myself have failed plenty of times. I do it all the time. And it's important to acknowledge that that's part of the learning process, and I really appreciate you sharing it. On the other side of that coin, though, what are some of the really big wins that MobileFUSED has had over the years? And what are some of the big wins maybe that Quogen is seeing right now?
So MobileFUSED started out, as a typical small network and sort of grew. It really does well in the addiction industry, and it's starting to do well in the finance and a couple other industries. And it's gone really deep in certain verticals. At its peak, I think, or as we've grown, we've kind of multiplied year over year. We've had some huge successes and some failures. We do about $6 million a year in revenue, I think, is where we're at on track for this year. So that was kind of something that was really big because we were kind of like inching up. And it takes a lot to kind of get there. It's not an overnight success, like you said. There's been a lot of failures to learn how not to do things so that you can do them really well. Some of the other big successes, I guess, I did Mobile Money Bandit, which was a course on teaching pay-per-call, which isn't really available anymore since it's kind of like 10 years outdated. But the course itself did $500,000 in the first 2 months it was available. And for me, that was a huge success. But what it really created was, and what fulfilled me was, I created multiple six-figure publishers out of that course. People that came to me and said, wow, you taught me pay-per-call, and I'm earning over $1 million a year doing what you taught me. For me, that was huge because I wasn't sure if I could actually teach and if it was gonna be valuable, this course that I created. So those were some of the really huge successes that I've had. I also went on to spend the money. Some people want to know, like, what do you do with all that money? I've actually been able to join. I love off-road racing, so cool. The Baja 1000, and so I actually got second place in the Baja 1000 last year in a UTV. So that was a huge victory for me.
Congratulations! That's nice work.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, what's the difference then between MobileFUSED and other networks that are out there?
I would say quality is a big factor of it. I'm not saying that everybody else has bad quality, but we've really put in really understand what we call it as a three-legged stool. So there's three legs to this stool that is pay-per-call, right? You have your advertisers, you have your publishers, and then you have the CPA network. And all three of these have to stand in order to have a successful offer. And so how do you get all three of these to be successful without one of them being, cut off and per se? So we've created a quality feedback loop, and that quality feedback loop is able to measure each and every leg of the stool and provide feedback to one another by analyzing either a sample of calls or all the calls to say, here's what's happening. And it's not always the publishers that are doing a bad job. A lot of times it's advertisers that are doing a bad job that they don't know that they're doing a bad job. So giving them that feedback is really important. And so quality on both sides is important. Do we have a quality offer that's going to answer the phone, pick up the phone, and do the best job that they can on monetizing that lead? And on the other side is the publisher. Are they sending in the type of traffic that offer wants? And so marrying those two is really important, and that's what that third leg is for, which is MobileFUSED.
Amazing. I think that one of the differences, the big differences between CPA and normal straight sale type offers and pay-per-call is the fact that the advertiser is so important, like you said. You have all these humans that are answering the phone, and if they don't do a good job training their staff, managing their workforce, their hours of operations, and quality assurance, they're not going to convert those calls at a way that allows them to have a consistent payout over time that, has enough room in it to have publishers, networks, and advertising in it. And so I think what you said about advertiser quality is really, really important, especially in a space like this where it's super high touch and a human speaks to every single customer.
Absolutely. I think that, it's a big red flag for me and for my team when an advertiser says, we can take as many calls as you can deliver. Because for me, and a lot of guys that are in this industry know that they're like, okay, well, if you could take as many calls as that you could take, that tells us that you're not monetizing those calls the best, and you're actually doing something, what we call, and excuse me for being offensive, but it's a pump and dump offer. And what they're doing is they're just picking up the phone and saying, you got credit card in hand? Okay, no, you don't. Click. And so we got to make sure that we match those two. We can't have the pump and dumps in there because it doesn't do the publishers justice.
And it's not like these guys are sitting around with warehouses full of thousands of people waiting around for a big publisher to randomly show up and send them 1,000 calls this afternoon. They actually have to pay for those people that are sitting there so they can take unlimited volume. And so it's not financially sustainable. And I think that's a great red flag that even publishers can look out for in some of the groups and in communities that we run and other ones. If someone says they can take unlimited volume, chances are that there's probably a problem somewhere in that advertiser or that value chain. So what do you think is some really good advice we can give to people who are just getting started in pay-per-call or are new to CPA in general?
If you're new, you've got to fail, which means you've got to go out there and put yourself out there in the marketplace, and you've got to try. And trying is half the battle. Put yourself out there. You may not succeed the first time, but you're going to learn how not to do it. Probably the biggest thing that I really try and step back on a daily basis or at least a weekly basis and say, how am I providing value? Because money follows value. And if you don't provide value, the money's not going to last very long. So if you're not putting value in front of these advertisers or the network that you're sending calls to, it doesn't matter how many calls you send and how much traffic you have and whatever it is that you want. If you're focused on how do I make money, that's the wrong thing to focus on. You need to focus on how do I create value in this relationship, because once you create the value, the money will just continue to follow, and then you can build processes around that value and more money will come in. And so the biggest thing I could advise is, where is the value? How do you create value? And then the money will get there.
And this is a tough thing that I think most affiliates have trouble wrapping their head around, because when they make the transition from a straight sale or a CPA offer to pay-per-call, they need to think that this offer is going to last months or years, And if I can deliver really good value, the advertisers are going to hire more people on their teams to take those calls. And it's going to be a real growth campaign over time that they can mine for really long timelines, as opposed to CPA, where a campaign could be around for 7 days even, or 5 days, and then disappear and they have to start from scratch. So I believe wholeheartedly in the advice you just gave. It's really important for affiliates transitioning from CPA to pay-per-call to focus on intent and quality and just delivering a really good customer experience so that the advertisers can actually close these people.
And you said a really good point in one of your other videos I saw, and I don't know who it was with, but listening to the call recordings and like getting those recordings is so valuable. Like understanding what the advertiser is actually looking for, because the offer description is just a somebody typed in and made that up. And sometimes they do a really good job of writing the offer description, but sometimes they don't, and they don't actually tell you everything that advertiser or what all the qualifications are. So if you can get a hold of those call recordings and ask your pub manager and say, hey, can I get, a sample? Can I get 20 call recordings? Listen to them, because you're going to hear things that those agents say and that the call center says that says, oh, well, we don't take that type of insurance. We take this type of insurance. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, the light goes on. I've been advertising on the wrong keyword the whole time.
Also, you can always just call these numbers too and tell the network that you're calling in to do a test to talk to the call center and actually go through their sales process. And if you're honorable about it and you warn the network, they won't bill the advertiser. And then not only do you have a recording of that, but you had a personal experience with this center and understand how they qualify people. And that'll help you go back and do your media buying, change your keywords, find new traffic sources, do all sorts of really cool stuff. So I agree with you. The call recordings are a lot of work. They're really long when they're a sale, and it's a lot of invested time, but that's how you're going to win in the space if you're new. You're never going to learn faster than listening to these call recordings. So Absolutely. What are some other ways that affiliates and publishers can gain competitive advantage in the pay-per-call space?
I would say talking to your publisher manager, like finding out what's out there, telling them that you're willing to test new offers for them that maybe other publishers aren't willing to, and getting out of your comfort space. One thing that's really comfortable about being a publisher and living this dream that you could just work anywhere, anytime you want, and be in an office, work at home. I'm here in an office, and now that I have 2 kids, I can't really be at home. That doesn't work out for me, but putting yourself out there, which means not only talking to your pub manager, but go to a convention, man. If they invite you out to one of these places, or they invite you to be among other publishers, and you have the financial money to even make it to one of these things, go, because that was a life changer for me. Like when I got invited to Affiliate Summit, I thought, I don't want to go to one of these places where there's all these people and when I showed up, I was being introduced to the CEO of this company and the CEO of that company, and then over here I'm talking to the head guy or the advertiser manager of this one, and all of a sudden I'm meeting direct relationships with advertisers, and all these people are like, oh, you do that? Well, we want that. And just because you show up to a show, they will approve you on the network like that. If you're a real human being and you want to get into a network, go meet them in person, because once they know that you're a real person and you're actually going to send them real traffic, that is a big win for a network.
The affiliate space is pretty old school when it comes to relationships, and I think that what you just said is some of the best advice you can give any affiliate, whether new, old, big, small, whatever space, it doesn't matter. I think it's fair to say that you and I have probably both made millions of dollars by showing up at these trade shows. I met my business partner, my best friend, at this, which one was it? It was AdTech San Francisco over a decade ago. It was my first show, and I ended up meeting my business partner today there and built an amazing relationship. And so really, it's worth the expense. There's a lot of fun to be had too. MobileFUSED and Ringba, we co-sponsored the caller meetup at the last affiliate summit, which was amazing. We had a lot of fun, and literally got 300 of the decision makers in our industry in the same room. Half of them were CEOs or partners of companies. And like you said, all of us are willing to talk to new affiliates and generate those relationships and create something new. And so I think that may be the best advice anyone's really given on the show, as simple as it may be, invest in yourself and show up at one of these trade shows. You're definitely not going to lose money if you just go talk to all of us, because we're all there, and it's how we do business.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that investment alone is like the ROI on these shows. I mean, from a network perspective is huge, but from a publisher's perspective, like you invest $500 to go to one of these shows, maybe $1,000 if you're really far and you got to buy a plane ticket or drive or whatever. But the deals, the 10,000, the 20,000, and the $500,000 deals, they come from meeting people and talking in person.
Exactly. Are there any tools that you recommend affiliates use to grow their business in the pay-per-call space?
Wow, there's so many. I mean, there's so many tools, and there's tricks and tools and stuff. One thing I would suggest is building a team. Like, you can have all the software and all the tools, and you can find all of them online. You could just type in pay-per-call tools. And there's keyword research, and there's looking at all the back end. But people are what kind of like create this. And when we do millions of dollars, it's because we have people helping us advance with what we're doing. And programmers, like I have multiple programmers, and it depends on what you want to do and what your end goals are. But controlling aspects of pages and doing things the way you want to on the internet, you've got to have these people in place, whether it's people who track all the money for you. Very important to track the dollars. If you don't track the dollars, you'll never know how much money you're going to make or lose. Tracking what calls are converting and what calls are not converting. Using people for building landing pages and stuff. You've got to find the team. And once you find these people, keep them. They are very valuable to you, and keep them happy. That's really important. So as far as tools go, I think people are the most important piece of the puzzle when building a large company. Or it's still a small company, but
sure, but
millions of dollars is still a small company.
Yeah, your advice is spot on. And affiliates can always start out with virtual assistants, or maybe try some people on Upwork. And, your career's been long. I have no doubt that you've made maybe not perfect hiring decisions and have to let people go and swap people out over the years. Maybe they're, good, genuine person, but not a good fit for your organization. And that's part of the experience of growing a company. And so we should definitely always focus on, the end goal, which is building a team. And if some people don't make it along the way, especially outsourcers, they're tough. You have to keep trying, because like you said, without your team, how are you going to manage budgets, track everything, build landing pages, split test, do all of that work in a day? It's really hard as a solo affiliate.
And back in a business partner of mine, he told me, hire slow and fire fast. It's a true thing. Like, you gotta invest in finding the right people. And so I would suggest putting some education. If you're past the six-figure mark, if you're making $200,000 a year, or wherever you're at, and if you're ready to hire people, invest energy and time into finding the right people. I have like a 5-step process that people have to go through, and they're interviewed by like panel of people before they actually make it to the team. Because when you invest in somebody, especially in this industry, you can bet that if they're going to be helping you with like a bigger task, or if they're going to be a full-time employee, it's going to take you probably 3 months to get an ROI out of them, and to get them up to speed on what CPA is and how CPA works and how to listen to phone calls and how to do all the things that you need to do. So you're investing a lot in them. So you better invest that time up front to find the right people.
I completely agree with you. So what are some benefits of working with a pay-per-call network instead of, for instance, trying to go direct, which is such a big deal in a normal CPA campaign?
So there's benefits on both sides. I don't want to say that, I wouldn't say that everybody needs to work with a network and not everybody needs to work, because I work with a lot of direct companies, but working with a network allows you to be aggregated with other traffic. So if you can only send maybe 10 calls a day or 20 calls a day, you can't go direct to an advertiser and say, hey man, I got 20 good calls for you a day. They're going to laugh at you, and they're going to probably block all of your emails and block your calls. They're more about like, how do I scale my business? And they need to move. Like, their budgets are probably, 10, $50,000, $100,000, sometimes a day of what they need to buy in traffic to keep their business running. So one thing is scalability. You can't scale until you have 100, 500, 1,000 calls a day coming. And at that point, if you're delivering value, which means that your calls are converting and your quality is amazing, at that point you might be able to look at going direct to an advertiser. But you also have to understand that the quality aspect of it is a big piece. And if you don't have that relationship and you don't go out and build that relationship, that network has already built all these relationships with multiple advertisers. And usually the good CPA networks are aggregating multiple offers together to give you the ability to send in different traffic, and they're able to match that with multiple different places that are open at different times, different states that accept different types of traffic. And so they'll have IVRs to kind of weed that traffic. So working with a network gives you the opportunity to send in a wide range of calls and have them delivered the way that they need to go with the quality that is needed.
Great answer. Capacity management is a big problem in our space. You have to remember that humans answer these phones. And so networks are really great resources for that because they have tons of relationships on the back end and can help get wider coverage that allows maybe a smaller and a newer affiliate to come play in this space without having to make the upfront investment of doing all that business development and then figuring out how to make it all happen. So I actually view pay-per-call networks as a huge resource as opposed to networks in some other spaces, simply because we're dealing with humans and those relationships are so important. What are some of the biggest opportunities in pay-per-call right now, and what verticals do you see really growing over the next couple of years?
I think the biggest opportunities, well, it's really, I mean, pay-per-call is still kind of in a grander scheme of things. It's still a small niche. Like, cell phones are still like they're finally crossing that point where they're becoming there's more searches done on cell phones than there is on computers. And so as that grows and as that kind of like evolves, there's going to be even more opportunities to grab volume from all the different places that we can get phone calls. The opportunities I think that exist are in all the fragmented spaces, all your mom and pop shops, and so like the aggregated places, like tow trucks, for example, is a really fragmented market that it's really hard to grab on a national scale. There's not national aggregators out there that I know of that are for tow trucks, and so there's a lot of scalability in the small business space if you can apply yourself to that. But it's hard on a network level because for example, I'm in the health insurance industry. It's hard there's not one advertiser that takes all 50 states in the health insurance space and all these, there's a few that take a lot of calls in a very wide range, but there's only a few. And then you start sprinkling in all of these smaller businesses in this, maybe they take one state or 5 states. And so you start sprinkling those in, the volume starts to get big. But this is happening in all the different spaces that are out there, and as they grow, that's I think where the opportunity is in these non-national places. So you're a really good example is the roofing industry. It's starting to take off. There's a lot of roofer aggregators out there now because a roofing lead is worth like what, 30 grand, I think, if they actually go through and get a roof. I don't know what the exact numbers are, but it's a lot. And so you're going to start to see those higher ticket industries start to really grab onto pay-per-call because calls are expensive and they're expensive to track. They're expensive to generate. And so I think that as things get cheaper and cheaper, a lot of those fragmented industries will have aggregators stepping in, and the networks will be able to help assist those aggregators in expanding.
And what does the future hold for MobileFUSED?
MobileFUSED is growing as a team. I think that we're 13 people strong now. I don't know exactly, but I think it's 11 or 13. I'm sorry, I think it's 12 or 13. It's growing in different industries. We haven't grown real wide in lots of offers because we've really honed in kind of our skills on the, like I said, the 3-legged stool and the feedback loop that we've created and patented. But well, I shouldn't say patented, service marked. So I think that we're going to kind of we're looking at different industries that are valuable, and we're looking at where we can kind of offer that expertise, and we're looking at what MobileFUSE expertise is in that quality, and it is a little bit higher ticket items. So MobileFUSE is looking at those higher ticket items. They're looking at their quality control. They're bringing on lots more publishers, and then we're bringing on stronger offers. And so what we look at is in MobileFUSE is we have a backbone buyer usually who's one of those wider aggregators, and then we start layering in smaller guys to be able to grow and offer. Like you said, that's what a network is built for, is to be able to have that wide range to be able to accept the volume and then set those expectations for the advertisers. How many calls are they going to get? How much staffing do they need to hold? And then setting the expectation on the other side with the publishers. How many publishers do we have that can generate this many calls? So we're kind of expanding the opportunities we have, and we're also expanding the publisher base also.
So if publishers or advertisers want to do business with MobileFUSE, how do they get a hold of you guys?
Go to MobileFUSE.com. There's a sign-up link there. You can sign up as a publisher. There's also an advertiser link, so if any advertisers are out there and are looking for calls, we're only accepting a few spaces, but feel free to inquire. But for publishers, it's not an easy process. We deny probably 75% of the applications. So if you have experience and you have a reference, that definitely helps. Or if you want to go to, I think the next show I'll be at is in Las Vegas Affiliate Summit, which is in January. But I think some of the team is going out to Boston to LeadsCon. So go out there and meet them, and you're probably almost guaranteed to get approved.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. We really appreciate you taking your time to give advice to people in the industry, and we look forward to seeing more from MobileFUSED in the future.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for putting this show together, man. I'm really excited to be a part of this, and I look forward to the next shows coming out.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks for watching the Paper Collar Show. Let us know what you think by joining the conversation and commenting below. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe. And if you're on mobile, tap the bell. Whether you're new to PaperCall or an industry veteran, we invite you to join the free community at papercallers.com. This episode of Paper Callers is brought to you by Ringba Call Tracking and Analytics. See how Ringba is inventing the future of calls at ringba.com. See you next week.